It's at a good...
Okay, it's 5 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to
Yeah,
order.
that's good.
Could we begin with the minutes? Everyone should have received a copy of the minutes. Thank you, Shannon, very much again. Are there any additions, corrections, reasons for the minutes? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to accept the minutes.
Second?
No, I need a motion.
Oh.
Cindy's making the
I'm
motion.
really flying, sorry.
Who made the motion?
Second.
Cindy made the motion. Who seconds?
Second.
Thanks, Dale. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
I apologize.
Bert, do we want to jump into I think that's going to be the longest, or how long is the Fontaine contract status discussion?
10 seconds.
Okay, go. I'm timing you.
Okay, so it's been signed, it's been distributed. We sent a copy to the MSBA. Done.
Done. Perfect. I hope it's been signed because Fontaine's been there pushing dirt around, so. Okay, Bert?
All right, so we just have a couple slides and it can be a shared thing. As people know, we've been working with Fontaine since they're got mobilized out on the site to come up with the best way to kind of share the site between the school needs and the contractor's needs to get the project built. A lot of that has got to do with how the site is accessed and how we share school traffic with the construction traffic and make sure that we're keeping everybody kind of separated and safe throughout the process. So we've looked at a lot of options. The design documents had the suggestion on it that the North Road be used for the construction traffic for the first half of the project while we're building the new school, because that's the closest to the construction activity, and that the South end up being reserved for school traffic and becomes two ways in and out of the building, or in and out of the parking lots, and that the South lot becomes part of the school's domain. So there's a cost associated. The road's a little bit narrow for two-way traffic to safely navigate that, and we wanted to do something about, there was at the pre-construction meeting also concerned that the sidewalk was, for the walkers, was still up on the construction traffic side. So we wanted to look at different ways we could address that, and widening the south lane was an option. Paving plants are closed in the winter, so that was a high cost associated with that, but we've worked with our engineers and come up with a solution that doesn't involve having to pave it with asphalt, but we can still widen and have a good driving surface on the road. But as part of due diligence, we wanted to explore and make sure that we explored every option that was available to make sure that we had a solution in the end that was cost effective, that was safe above all, and would serve both the contractor's needs and the school's needs. So these are the 5 options that we looked at. There was one option was to access with cars through the treehouse neighborhood one way in, and then they'd come out on the drive to the school. The second was to look at bringing all the cars on the school drive, the south school drive, and just have walkers go through the treehouse neighborhood. Third option was to widen the south entrance drive, which is the one that was really on the original contract documents. We also looked at swapping the school traffic to the north entrance because the sidewalk was there, and bringing the construction traffic to the south drive, and having blackout periods where the contractor wasn't allowed to go in and out of the site, which would be when the drop-off and pick-up times were. That ended up complicating things on the contractor side, and they've had experiences in the past with the school gets out about the same time contractors quit for the day, and having to pay subcontractors overtime for an hour to wait until the blackout period ended so they could leave. So that wasn't really a viable option in the end, and we ended up back with 3, but I'll let Dr. Leclerc kind of jump in and talk about the treehouse process, I guess.
Sure. So when we started exploring all of the options and Treehouse came up, the Button Road specifically, I reached out to Kerry over at the Treehouse community and asked if we could come and talk to folks to kind of gauge where everyone was with this. So we set up a meeting last week. It was during the day. I did ask Kerry, if she wanted us to also hold an evening meeting, but the Treehouse community the facility was not available in the evenings. So we just went with the daytime one. We had really good turnout. And Bert came with me, Tom and Dale. And I think overwhelmingly, I would say first and foremost, on a positive note, that people were very supportive of the school project. Everyone was very supportive of the school project happening. However, they had a lot of concerns that they raised around putting cars, buses, in the sheer volume of that on their road. What was good for us to hear was that I think it's fair to say that they feel as though they have a lot of challenges on their roadway now. They feel that cars go really fast. There are some winding sections. They have, I think it's fair to say that they have a larger than normal, maybe demographic of children with special needs. So they're very sensitive to the access on their road and keeping their road really safe. So we talked about signage. They had some concerns. They said people drive through stop signs now on their road. So they don't have a lot of confidence in the effectiveness of signs. So we spent about an hour and a half talking about some of their concerns. I took them down. Dale made a list, and we said we would bring the concerns back to the city and talk to the police and fire and the city planner and the DPW to try and get answers to some of their concerns. However, when I left that meeting, by the next day we started to go back to the drawing board and say, well, what are some of our other options? What are some of the challenges that we can try and overcome on our site? Because I think at the end of the day, I don't have eyes and my staff doesn't have eyes once cars, buses, and or people go onto Button Road. I can't control the speed. I can't control whether they're doing things they should or should not, like going through stop signs. So a lot of that is out of my hands. And I mean, I could ask the police department to station someone there every single day, but I'm not sure that's the most cost-effective or useful purpose for the police department. So we really started to look at our site again, and the biggest stumbling block, I think, on our site initially was going to be the cost. So I went back to Tim last week and Adam, who's not here, and said, you know, we've got to try and look at these options again and see if there's anything else we can do. And I think that's where some of the other options that we came up with, how they came about. And I think that they were able to get a more reasonable cost, which we'll go into after. So at this point, I am recommending that we not use the Button Road logistics route. If this group votes on the other traffic pattern that we're going to look at, utilizing the school, and if that is the case, I will communicate that with the Button Road and Treehouse community. Based on the feedback that they gave me, it was a learning experience. I think that, you know, for example, we talked about the volume of cars that would go through at pickup and drop-off time. And they said what I didn't understand was that there's already a high volume of cars that come and park illegally on the other side of the fence in the Treehouse community, and their kids like walk to them. So there are factors that I really needed to learn from the actual residents of the community that I think was an important conversation for us to have. So I appreciate all that feedback, and I took it back, and I think we've spoken, the project manager, Bert, Tom Brown, Matt, we've spoken 4 or 5 times, I think, since we had that meeting. So we keep going back to the drawing board, and it keeps changing. And but I think the bottom line is, from a school safety standpoint, I would rather have my eyes on kids and vehicles and buses for as long as I can. And if I can keep this within the school property, I'm not impacting the Button Road people more than they've already been impacted. Number one. Number two, I have my own, we have staff in the building that are deployed at various points in our parking lot, and we'll make sure kids can cross intersections and get to where they need to go, and they're following the rules on the pedestrian path. So I can control what's on our property a little bit more, and that's really where I'm leaning at this point, so.
I think
Turn it
also
back.
just my observations of being at that meeting, and I just want to reiterate something Bert had gone over, which there were actually two treehouse options, Button Road options. One was sending the traffic that way, and one was sending the students, the walkers, that way.
Yeah.
The issue that had us move the traffic that way was both the north and south entrances to Whitebrook are not wide enough for two-way traffic today as they stand. So Button Road looked like a viable option. And I would just say that I'm not a fan of having information that happens in this process appear in the newspaper before the committee's aware of it, and it did, obviously. But to a little bit
We
of our...
didn't call the press.
A little bit to our, to our defense is, we went to the meeting seeking feedback, input. We had no way, there was no way we were prepared for what we faced, number one. And number two, we had no idea the press was going to be there. So we had no way of knowing in advance that this would even be any more public than this particular meeting. But the point, I think, that Allison and the rest of us made over and over again is this was part of a process. Allison had met with DPW, police, fire, city engineers. Because before she did all of that, we don't even know if Button Road is going to work.
Right.
Is Button Road going to work in this scheme of a new traffic pattern for 2 years? Going through that process, the answer was yes, it will work. Police, fire, everyone was okay with it. Now we go to Button Road and say, okay, now we're here. And I think sure, it surprised them, it seemed quick. I mean, if the contractors had their way, they would have been in there 2 weeks ago. We've actually held them off from having their separate construction entrance. But coming back, again, as part of that process and coming back with the feedback we got from that meeting, but I think even more importantly, Allison's point about us having eyes on the kids in the traffic, it brought us back to, can we keep it on the school property somehow?
Yeah, I think that's right, Tom. I'm glad you brought that up. It really is part of the process. And it's a process that can't start until all the players are there, which means we couldn't really have the conversation until the contractor was on board, mobilized, got familiar with the site, and found out what their needs were going to be as far as access to the site. Dr. LeClaire mentioned that there were probably 5 or 6 calls since the Button or the Treehouse meeting, but there were several calls before that meeting too, looking at options that didn't really get to Treehouse. Treehouse became one of them and got worked into the process as an option to be explored. So I think the meeting was just a continuation of that process to, okay, it works with the fire department, the police department, city engineering's okay with it, and then we came to Treehouse to see what issues does this present to you guys.
And I think we had the Button Road option maybe at most a week and a half before we actually met with the Button Road people. So we went to all those players within a very quick turnaround.
So,
Yeah.
But I think the last point that you made, I think Allison is very important too. We found out there are some issues caused by school parents that exist today on Button Road that we probably need to address going forward. And there's probably issues that police need to address on Button Road going forward. Won't affect the project, but the point is those are pre-existing issues that that are in our control. There was a whole host of other pre-existing conditions. Pre-existing conditions are out of our control, but these are ones that obviously can be addressed. So we landed on number 3.
And this is option 3. Basically, it's, there's a few details that aren't completely accurate in this that are still being discussed. But basically, the concept is that, again, construction traffic is the orange line at the top. They would take that north drive for two-way traffic for construction vehicles. We've got a fenced-in area of the construction zone. We're showing fencing on the south side of the blue line, which is the school traffic. Where that fence is, whether it's one fence, two fences, that's still all being those are the details that we're working out still. But our idea, I think, at my office at least, is that students would come down on the north side, which is the top of the blue line, and that way they can kind of just skirt around along this construction fence and not have to cross traffic at all. If they come down on the south side where that yellow line of the blue fence is, there is a crossing at the drop-off. The red line shows that we maintain access around the building for the fire department, for emergency access, the staging areas. Number 8 says that, okay, the contractor is going to take over the entire north parking lot, so they're willing to do some work to replace the lost parking lot to the school. It ultimately, I don't think is going to land on the bus loop, because that would create other issues for just keeping the emergency fire lanes and the buses separate from the parent traffic. So, then you can get into kind of a more detailed plan down at the bus loop. And basically what happens at the north lot right now, the parents come in, they drop off their students, and they kind of circle around the lot and back out and up the other side. So we're going to keep all the school traffic to the south now. You can see the blue dashes representing the cars queuing up, dropping off their students. Then there's a sidewalk access right to the front door from that point. Probably a little bit of striping just to kind of corral people where they're supposed to go. And we'll add some spaces that, instead of going and leveling out the bus loop to create additional parking, there's an island in that south lot that we would kind of have them level that out, and we can gain 10 to 12 spaces there. And then along the south edge of that lot, there's room between the tree line and the parking lot to add some more side parking there. So we're showing an additional 16 spaces on the side, which brings us to a total of 28 spaces added. And there's about 20 staff cars right now parking in that north lot, so that should suffice the need. But you can see that to the left of that, as you go up towards the Button Road access or the Treehouse access, there's room to put another 8 spaces in easily. And then we can also extend down beside the building if necessary, if parking becomes a real issue. But I think that we start out with what we perceive the need to be right now, with the 16 spaces along the south edge of the lot, and then taking over that island and see how it goes. Fontaine can very quickly kind of create those temporary parking areas for you. So they're talking with them. They indicated that if they had to do the whole bus loop, they could probably come in on a weekend and get that taken care of. So there's going to have to be signage. I just put some basic, obvious ones: stop signs and do not enter signs. And then the bus loop remains functioning as it is. We might kind of alter the course back to the two-way south entrance, just to make the transition easier, so that the buses and the construction vehicles don't have to get as close and turning out of that and back to the road. And the price for the road work to widen it came in at $37,100, $181 there it is. Just for the building committee's information.
Yeah, the parking lot, there's no cost to make those modifications to the parking lot, because we're giving the parking lot, this north parking lot, to the contractor for their use. So kind of the trade, they get that, but they'll make some more parking spots on the south parking lot. The road work is really what that cost is for, and that's for removing the topsoil, widening the road, putting in the hard surface. It's not for paving. As Kurt said, paving in the wintertime would be very expensive. That's a long stretch. But that should suffice. Maybe, again, some signage or some other miscellaneous details that we're going to work out. But we did receive a proposal today from Fontaine for that.
So this would be $37,000 would be a change order that would come out of construction contingency.
Correct.
So it's not going to affect anything else, not the ad alternates or
No.
anything else? Okay, fits in.
Remind me what was in that construction contingency?
The value of it.
Yeah.
I want to say it was 1 point,
The construction contingency was 2.2.
2.2.
2.2 million.
That's what I wanted to say.
That's right. I knew George. What you meant.
I appreciate everything that's been said, everything that's, and where it's going and all the efforts before, but Allison mentioned it needs our approval. I don't see why.
It's over 25.
It's over
It's a change
25,000.
order. We had at the last meeting, if you recall, Dave, we had voted to authorize the superintendent to approve change orders up to 25. Over 25 would come back to this committee.
Okay, that's fair. I didn't realize that.
Now, that will,
Unless you want to give me more, Dave.
that will,
No, in all honesty, I don't wanna spend much time on nickels and dimes. I trust the, I like the oversight, I like the transparency. But we have a project manager, we have an architect, we have a good contractor, we have a superintendent. Do your job. That's how I look at it, you know.
One thing we did talk about last meeting too was, so we gave Allison, she has authority up to 25,000. Then we talked about creating a much smaller sub-finance committee, basically, that we could bring something.
right, we were going to lead into that, Adam, which
Yeah.
Dave and I didn't practice this for a segue, but that's a great segue, Dave, because
Sure.
this is a great example of if Allison got this information Friday instead of today,
Yeah.
we wouldn't be meeting till the end of February. And they could not wait that long, so we'd either call a meeting, interim meeting, or the other option is we could meet more frequently, if you all would like to meet more frequently, or we could create this subcommittee and look for folks that are available during the day. Now, the subcommittee could be made up primarily of, Allison, who did you rattle off your names? Yourself, the mayor, not the mayor, sorry. Yourself,
Dale, the business manager,
sorry, Dale.
who has a background in finance.
Yeah. Who were the names you?
I was thinking myself, Dale, you as the chair, and the mayor did suggest perhaps
Yeah, I knew the mayor was in there somewhere.
Michael Owen or Jen Gallant. And Jen is not currently appointed to this committee, but she is trying to get her appointed. She's the new Melissa, I don't know, what's her title? The auditor?
She
or-
actually is called the
Treasurer.
That's incorrect. She's not the finance director. She's just the treasurer.
He's
Treasurer.
the treasurer.
But Michael Owens he's the person that does all the,
He's the procurement
Procurement
officer,
officer.
and he's doing all
so I
of
said,
the
well,
billing
it
for the
probably would make
project.
sense to have him, but I mean,
Right.
it's open to
And then if there's someone else here on the committee who thinks they could be available on short notice during the day, we could, Dave, John.
Oh, yeah.
I don't
we
know
could
if I trust
definitely-
you like that.
No, I didn't
Larry
realize
volunteer.
I
Larry?
didn't realize it was this $25,000 threshold, which is fine. We didn't have that in the high school. And
What was the high school, just out of curiosity?
It was not.
Huh?
It was.
So that is the other option is
Well,
to.
no, I don't want to change the train. I mean, I think the discussion's great because it's centered on safety. And I think everyone should be aware of that.
Yeah.
And your point of time, being timely, so, the information, I don't want to blow up the contractors. The $37,000, I could see that easily being a change order for fixing Button Road for $37,000 due to the construction.
Yeah.
So, to me, it's a wash.
Yeah. You're right, I was explaining to Allison that sitting on the committee, not as chair for the high school, I don't recall that stuff coming back to the committee, so there had to be that smaller group that was authorized to take care of it.
I don't know, I think it was one person.
Yeah,
I believe you're right.
I hear you. I hear you. So, what's your pleasure? How do you feel? Those are the options. We meet more frequently. We call emergency meetings if we need them. We could increase that amount that we authorize the superintendent and that crew to approve, or we create this subcommittee of a smaller group.
I was just gonna say, I don't see the calling an intermediate meeting as a viable solution, given the size of the committee.
Yeah, agreed. And thank you for reminding me of that, because if we don't have 8 people show up for that, we don't have a quorum, so we can't even have a meeting.
Right,
Yeah.
right, and then you're in a bigger pickle.
Right.
I think either the option of a subcommittee or increase the value that the superintendent is presenting.
Can we do both?
Yeah, so
Yeah, so I was just
Why
gonna say.
can we increase what the superintendent can and also then go to a subcommittee?
I'm open to that, sure. What's your pleasure?
What are you thinking of increasing
What's-
it to?
Tim, you have a-
38.
Well, I was good for 50. I
You're the
mean,
best,
25 is 1% of the 2.1.
Well, I would recommend that the subcommittee meet on a regular basis to go over what's new on the project as far as financial items, and we can give a update monthly on what's happening, and vote on anything that needs voting on. But again, if there's something that comes up quickly and we do need to meet, again, a smaller subcommittee is better. You have 2 out of 3 approval, great, and maybe raising that limit to 50,000. Again, if it's something over that, usually we have time to bring it to you because it takes the contractor, there's more steps involved, he's packaging, developing the price. Usually it's a bigger issue that we have enough heads up on. This is something that we're just trying to get going, and it's not that we didn't know about it, but we've been talking around it for a long time and finally got some pricing that we could bring forward. So I would say raise the limit, but still let's plan on meeting on even if it's on a Tuesday morning or something for a half hour, just to kind of go through, here's the new proposals that have been submitted, this is what we're looking for to get approval on, even if it's under that 50,000.
Tim, were there going to, once we really get going, were there going to already be those weekly meetings?
Well,
Construction meetings?
we're having our weekly project meetings with the contractor. The contractor wouldn't be present at the
Like
end of
this?
this. No.
Deal.
The only other thing I would second, my experience in the other building projects I've done is that group, I think we call them the directors on those projects, were 3 people. And it was for them being nimble to come together and so forth.
Yeah, and
So
if something does immediately come up, we could just email out a proposal to the 3 and just say, hey, if you guys can look at this, and let's get on a conference call at when are people available, and it works pretty
So I
good.
think a smaller number makes them more nimble, I guess is the point I'm
Yeah.
making, yeah.
So Dale, Allison, and Tom? Just keep track. And
Well,
Michael Owens.
I'm in favor of that concept and those players.
Agreed. So I would entertain a motion, we can do it as one, I would think, to...
Can we? Or does that to be 2?
Okay, let's do 2.
Let's do 2.
I think,
I would entertain a motion, Shannon,
Just
to
questioning.
create that subcommittee of those members. Go ahead.
I make a motion that we make a subcommittee of the superintendent, Dale, Tom Brad, as a finance for subcommittee.
Got it.
For approving change orders over the established amount that the superintendent can do. We'll get to that stage next.
Yeah.
Got all that, Shannon?
I do.
Perfect. Is there a second?
Yes.
Dave already did.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Thank you very much. Okay, next I would entertain a motion to increase the amount that the superintendent can approve.
I make a motion to increase the amount the superintendent may approve on a change order up to $50,000.
Second.
A second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. Dale didn't think we would get that done before 7 o'clock.
none of us did.
Allison, sorry.
Well, I
I
said
knew we
tick-tock,
would.
I got a 6 o'clock school committee meeting, so.
Notice how I got back?
Gotta keep that moving.
One thing I learned in the Button Road presentation, though, was the roundabout. Plans are for the roundabout to be completed when school opens in September.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
So that was always put into the contract as a flexible phase that the contractor could kind of figure out what worked best with his schedule. But that it had to, the actual tie-in with Park Street had to happen this summer, not during school. So they feel that it's more than summer work to get the whole thing done, so they want to actually attack that right away. So as soon as they get the construction entrances separated, you'll see them start bringing in fill to do the portion that's on the old Williston corner of the site there.
They're already taken.
Yeah.
I've seen them ripping up.
Yeah, they're clearing it right now, but there's a lot of engineered field still to come in.
Will the construction entrance have to change then once that's done?
Once that's done, yeah, but small change.
I'm just curious how.
Yeah.
Good.
Bert, can you send me
Pardon?
The whole process. Can I say something short about it?
Sure.
I'll keep it short.
Sure, go ahead.
I guess, so my name's Stephen Jett, I live on 11 Button Road. And so I've been in favor of this project ever since it started, and I guess my only concern with one was, we got the letter on a Saturday. I know from hearing that it was a condensed schedule, and that we were given a letter on Saturday saying this was gonna happen out of the blue, and then, because everything that I've ever seen, because I followed this project from day one, and then we're gonna have a meeting Wednesday in the middle of the afternoon. I know Treehouse probably couldn't have an afternoon, but an option is, you guys control Whitebrook Middle School, they have an auditorium. Could have done the evening event at Whitebrook, and we could all just walk to it, so that's one other option. It could have been for an evening meeting. And just that logistically being able to do that, maybe get more time for people to react to it at least. Because I know a lot of stuff we can't post, even for public meetings, we can't post anything more than less than a week ahead of time for a public meeting for the committee or for the school building committee, so it seems like that would be kind of a logical timeline to keep up with if you're going to interact with the public on anything. So, and I know Button Road's been a concern before with some of the traffic we talked about, and I'm actually going to talk with the city council a little bit, because I know Button Road's actually their jurisdiction, or the mayor's office jurisdiction. I actually need to learn more about that on the city government side. But
It's a city street, that's about it. So it's,
Yeah.
it's the same as any other street in the city.
one suggestion maybe on signage is, since you guys are recommending to put the option 3 is on the front of Button Road, putting a sign saying not a school entrance or something like that. And because I know, like, in Holyoke, for example, when I'm coming home on Homestead, there's that shortcut that people can take to get to 202. They put up signs saying no through traffic around. Now, how many people pay attention to it's another thing, but at least there's a sign, say, up front telling people this is not a school entrance, and kind of just make sure to guide them towards the actual entrance throughout the project.
Yeah.
As a suggestion on signage. And the rest of the signage, I could work with the city council on, a children at play sign and a speed limit sign to address the existing issues. And I don't know if there's a way for, we have the issue of people driving and dropping their kids off illegally on the fire entrance and something, of maybe putting a staff member at that entrance. And if they try to drop their kid off, force them to get back in the car and go back around. I don't know what you could say, how forceful you could be on that.
I think
But if
I
there's at
think
least
that's
an
a
option of,
police, maybe our resource officer.
yeah, I don't know where that jurisdiction would fall, but that might be a suggestion to try to cut down on that.
But I think we had talked about.
We did hear about that.
That's starting with some additional education to the parents.
Yeah.
That you shouldn't be trying to pick up your kids from getting out of Whitebrook on Button Road. You should be in the school lot picking kids
Because
up.
my fear is when the new school opens and say there is some traffic backups as we get used to it, they say, screw this, I'm not gonna go down the new entrance, I'm just gonna go down Button Road anyway, and we get additional traffic with the 1,000 kids that are going to that one school.
Yeah.
So that's
Well,
kind
the
of
traffic flow should improve tremendously with the roundabout.
That's my hope.
It should improve, it should keep moving.
Yeah,
But River Way is a public street,
correct.
so they can park there.
Yeah.
You can't
But if
stop
they're
them.
blocking driveways and stuff?
I mean, blocking driveways is one thing, and somebody in the house would have to call. But, I mean, that's police. I mean,
Okay.
we talked to Alberti about it. Yeah, it's a public way. We thought when you turn onto, I guess, Treehouse or whatnot,
River
that
Valley
little,
from Button, yeah.
yeah, we thought half of that towards the emergency gate was not adopted as a public way, but it was all the way up to the gate,
Is it, okay.
so people could park there.
But I'm thinking even just like a stop, because some people, there's that curve, there's the S curve that comes in, and some people do come flying around that S curve. Now, part of it's the Treehouse people in general, and we're on that end of that curve where there's a blind way where our driveway is. There's probably about 15 kids under 7 or 8 years old right on Button Road alone, let alone rest of Treehouse.
And that's just what I was referring to about pre-existing conditions.
Yes.
So that really.
And I know that's not the
Add no
problem.
bearing on the school, but.
I'm gonna follow up with
but
the city
absolutely.
council and stuff on that, but I do thank you guys for reconsidering the project, what options are where.
Yeah, we are out of Button Road, Mayor, so I think
Yeah.
we heard that earlier as a possibility, so.
And
We
just to
talked-
say,
we talked
it was not me or my wife that called the press, I actually dealt with it.
That's fine, that's fine. So I think, I know this is under OPM, I think the one thing I didn't cover in that category was groundbreaking, it says.
Yeah, it's just, now that the contractor is mobilized or mobilizing, usually we'll do some sort of a groundbreaking. I know we're in the winter. Well, technically we're in the winter. It hasn't really felt like it so much, but we actually not going to hopefully that continues. But just start thinking about what you want to do, if you want to do anything. But if you want to do something, usually we inform the MSBA. They're a major funding contributor, so they always like to be there for the photo shoots, and so we want to give them time to put in their calendar.
And you wanted some lead time for folks you wanted.
Yeah, I mean.
Mayor, why don't we put our heads together and come up with a couple dates? Thinking, we want to do something probably in the morning, you think? Yeah. I mean, I'd rather wait for a little nicer weather. Not that this is not nice now, but
Yeah,
as
I
we
mean,
expressed, like the
we had
spring
talked
where we
before
can
about
take
March.
kids out.
March is a
Yeah.
possibility.
Yeah, we've done them, well, steel is going up because
Yeah.
we started at this time of year, and it's just, it doesn't have to be at the beginning, it's just some sort of recognition for the
Yeah.
project.
Definitely.
Do it when you put the Christmas tree. You know, that's a
Yeah,
piece of
do a
steel.
little topping off.
Tradition.
Yeah, we'll plan on March, but
March, yeah.
Allison and the mayor can get together, find a date that works, and hopefully everybody can get there and throw some dirt. Throw some, you what?
And it won't snow.
And it won't snow. Although I was afraid winter's gonna come in April or something, you know?
Tom, I just have one other item, just, it was kind of tied to the Fontaine contract. Just that the MSBA, now that they have the contract, the city had entered into a project funding agreement with the MSBA. Now that we have a contractor on board with a bid price, there's going to need to be an amendment to that project funding agreement to adjust it to the actual bid values. And so there's a number of things that we're going to need to get from the contractor to be able to make that happen. Their schedule of values, so the breakdown of their where they break out certain costs that aren't other project costs that are eligible. We'll need to get the schedule to them as well as some other items. So the mayor did get an email from the MSBA saying, giving us a deadline of February 3rd to get all this information in. They just kind of pick a date and give you a month or so. It takes longer than that to get that together, but we are in the process of pulling that together.
Do we need an extension?
No, we'll just call them and just let them know that we're pulling it together, and we haven't gotten the schedule of values finalized yet or the schedule, but the next item will be modifying the contract. One of the other items that we need to get is a letter from the legal counsel stating that the bid savings can stay within the project rather than having to be returned to and not be used within the project. So there's just a number of things that we need to do. So that'll be kind of a locking in the budget, and that'll allow the city also to get reimbursed on construction costs. Because right now you can, but there may be some limits of what we get until we get that resolved. So in the next week or two.
Okay. And that's, I think the mayor signed that one originally, right? For the city.
Yeah.
Okay, so, good. Okay.
All right, so I just put together a quick little report from our end. On the construction side of things, Fontaine is mobilized. They've been doing a lot of stuff on the site, but there's been even more stuff happening kind of behind the scenes with paperwork. So we're receiving a lot of submittals right now. We've got a handful of RFIs that have come through that we're answering questions for them. And we met with being proactive. Controls in a building are a complicated thing, and getting the heating and everything to work these days is it's more than a thermostat on a wall. So just being proactive. We talked to Fontaine and they agreed, and we set up a meeting with the HVAC contractor and their controls subcontractor, just to kind of make sure, and our engineers were there, and we actually had the commissioning agent come out at the same time to make sure that everybody understood the design intent, and that we were doing everything we could to make the process at the end of the job as smooth as possible, getting all the systems up and running and functioning the way Larry needs them to keep the school comfortable for people. So that was a good meeting. We're going to do a similar meeting with the audiovisual and the electrical subcontractor, because that's another system that we tend to get calls after projects that, oh, I can't get the video to play in classroom 231 or whatever. So that's another one that we see is kind of difficult to make sure everything is working smoothly when we turn the keys over to you. So we'll do a similar meeting with them. FF&E, we've got a meeting next Wednesday with the superintendent and our FF&E consultant, just to kind of finalize the budget, go over the plans, make sure that, again, we're all on the same page for the concept. Detailed pieces of furniture will happen later on in the spring. We'll actually bring samples out. But if we know we want wobble stools and we want stand sit desks, that's the kind of thing that we're just making sure that we've got all that in the correct spots right now. And then that'll kind of finalize what their budget projection is for that, and come spring, we can start bringing some samples in for the district to try out. The second FF&E should actually say lead. A quick little lead update is that that's probably the next kind of meeting that we've got besides our regular job meetings, that brings the design team with the contractor, and it's just to get our lead consultant to sit with the general contractor who has to make a submission at the end of the project in order to get your certification, and make sure that they understand what all of their requirements are going to be, so that the paperwork that they submit will support their submission at the end. I think that our consultant actually will put the submission in for them, but they're going to assemble it all and have all the paperwork together. So that'll just go over the logistics of that. And we're breaking our lead submission into 2 phases, which is an option. We can do a design team phase earlier on, and we can do a construction phase later. You can do it all at once at the end of the project, but we find it goes a lot smoother if we can get all the design stuff done, and those answers, or those questions, any questions that the lead has with that, answered and resolved before the contractor stuff starts coming together. So
This is critical too, because at closeout of the project, the MSBA is going to look to make sure that you received your LEED certification, or that it's gone through and been audited. And that's worth 2% of your reimbursement, so that's a lot of money. So that's why it's critical to start this early and track it and make sure it's tracking correctly throughout construction.
And that's really where we're at from our office kind of things. Like I said, the contractors out there, this Thursday will be our first job meeting, and it can be a regular occurrence from now to the project. So
No surprises.
Not for you guys. Maybe every Thursday morning when I show up, they just have a few for me to look at.
Thanks.
When in the process, sorry, Tom.
No.
When in the process will we get the LEED certification?
At the very end, you'll likely be in school. So.
And the chances of it not meeting MSBA's requirement, we don't get the 2%?
You'll get it. That is the last thing that our office wants to deal with, is you not getting it.
So there is a scorecard, a LEED scorecard, in order to
Yeah.
reach certain levels. And if we needed 70, I don't remember what the numbers are, but if we needed 70 points, we're targeting 95, because we know that we're not going to achieve all of them. But
Right.
most of, with LEED, most of your points that you receive are really during the design phase, because you're really designing for this added energy efficiencies and those sorts of things. During construction, it's recycling materials, reuse, and some construction methods and items like that. But most of the points come really from the design phase, and then making sure that you're implementing what they design. So we should feel pretty comfortable going through, but you don't get it until the very end.
Right. And the 2 percentage points are really heavily tied to the energy efficiency of the building. So we've done energy models already, and our lead consultant continues to work on the models and talk with our HVAC engineers and our electrical engineers to make sure that we're that much more efficient than what the baseline building would be.
Okay.
So. Any other questions?
Yes. I've seen a lot of pictures on Facebook about football fields. Sounds wonderful.
Football field?
Yes. Makes me a little.
It's in the works.
Oh, no, it's all torn up.
No,
Oh, where
the
is
golf
the field?
posts are up.
Torn up.
New ones
yeah.
are up.
Where, What'd you say?
They put the goalposts up for the practice field.
Oh, over on the other side lot?
Yeah,
Okay, that was what I was gonna ask.
Yeah,
I've heard
yeah.
rumors.
yeah.
I hadn't heard for sure. That's what's happening?
The goalposts were going on the practice field.
For flag
The
football in the
practice, yeah.
spring.
Correct.
The back one or the one up on top?
The upper field.
Upper
Yeah.
field.
The upper field.
Yep.
Where's the shack and all that stuff go?
The shack, the press box is just gonna be stored until it can ultimately be set at the new field.
Okay.
So wherever the contract will be inside the fence someplace, they'll move it out of their way. And
Just people are asking me questions and I don't know the answers.
Yeah,
so-
Pat Rupp and I are still working.
Yeah.
The superintendent sent a letter to Park and Rec, so there's a lot of moving parts with that still
Right.
going on. I've been having conversations with Williston,
Okay.
looking at some dates for varsity, so.
And
it's
I'm
still-
meeting with Smith Vote. That's the latest
Oh, yeah.
for high school football.
So, a lot of moving parts.
Okay, like I
Hopefully
said,
all
a lot of
gonna
people
come
have asked.
Every day, we're doing football stuff. Every day, Shannon.
Good, I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, it's obviously moving separate from this committee, but sort of
Right.
just like John Doe Private Citizens working on that. But Pat's been doing a lot with behind the scenes, so,
Okay, thank you.
and Tom. Anything else? We're gonna get you guys out in time for school committee. Anything else? Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Any discussion? Somebody doesn't want to adjourn? All in favor? Thank you very much. Next meeting, Tuesday, February 25th,
5 o'clock?
5 o'clock.